I'll pray.
Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us through this week to this Sabbath, to this Friday evening. Thank you for providing for us and for protecting us. Please give us the power to keep this Sabbath day holy and to glorify you and to learn more of the truths for this time. Please be with us today or right now as we listen to your truths for this time. Please help us to understand and remember them. And thank you for calling us to be teachers. Please continue to be with us and continue to bless us. In Jesus' name, amen.
So today's presentation is Ruth Bader Ginsburg from Teslamber in Portugal. She did this in March of this year. So, loose ends. We're going to tie a few loose ends together and remind ourselves of some important points so we can see that everything is connected. Dispensations. First, we looked at the dispensations. There are always 4 dispensations in a reform line. We looked at how the message in each dispensation, or how the messages in each dispensation are the same message. So this is a line of the priest, and there are 4 dispensations, as we know. Then we focused on the latter rain dispensation. We saw how the message started with World War I and World War II and ended with equality. That message's main subject was the King of the North and the King of the South. There's more than just that, though. There are smaller connected parts. Layers. For example, one of the things we looked at was the fact that there are layers in our lines. In the history of 2018 and 2019, we're on 2 different reform lines. The priests and the 144,000s. We're still on those 2 reform lines. On the line of the 144,000, we were and still are in the early reign between 9/11 and the Sunday Law. In there is Raphia and Panium, 2019 and 2021. On the priest line, we were in the latter reign. And for the priests, 2019 was the close of probation. So these are layers. We're on more than one reform line. 2 subjects. The people that left this movement in the midnight cry time struggled with 2 things we taught. In 2018, we taught equality, and people left because of that. In 2019, we taught about the Sunday Law. There is a triple application of prophecy on that subject. The history of 1850, which is early writings, and 1888, which is the Great Controversy. So there are 2 subjects, and people struggle with both, equality and the nature of the Sunday Law. We have 2 subjects because we're on 2 reform lines. The midnight cry and the increase of knowledge. On the priest line, we have the midnight cry or Exeter, and it points to the close of probation, which was 2019. On the line of the 144,000, 2019 is Concord, or the increase of knowledge of the Sunday Law. So we have to understand the midnight cry, which is on the line of the priest, the bottom line, and that the end point of that is equality. And we have to understand increase of knowledge, which is the top line, the 144,000 line, and that was about the nature of the Sunday Law. And we have to do that because we're on two different reform lines. On the line of the priests, the message is equality, but there's also light on other subjects. The papacy. Fatima. Elder Jeff's main accusation, and his first, is that we've covered up the papacy's role and made everything about the United States. When the Midnight Cry message was presented in September and October of 2018 in the School of the Prophets, the first message was Fatima. But Elder Tess had a problem. She wanted to present something about the papacy. She presented Fatima, but she also wanted to do the line of the counterfeit. But everything had not been opened up, so she didn't do it. Towards the end of the school, the line made sense, so Elder Tess chose to teach it last, because at the beginning it wasn't all opened up. It wasn't Elder Tess's intention to split the study of the papacy into two parts. That's just what happened because that's how the message opened. She was forced to start with Fatima, which is the papacy, and finish on the papacy. We know that has to be significant that the first and last presentation of the Midnight Cry were about the papacy, and that was not human planning. This also happened with the World Wars. World War II opened up at the beginning of the Midnight Cry, and World War I opened up at the end, and that was not human planning either. Papacy and the King of the North. When the message between 2014 and 2019, while the message between 2014 and 2019 was about the King of the North and the King of the South, there is a connection between the King of the North and the papacy. We can see that in 1989. When we understand the King of the North and the King of the South, we also get light on other subjects, and one of those is the papacy. The papacy and the 144,000 line. So this bottom line is line 144,000. On the 144,000 line, 2019 is the increase of knowledge of the Sunday law. Let's expand that dispensation and look at the repeating pattern. 9/11 is Boston, their message is unsealed. Then there is an increase of knowledge, and 2019 is Concord. Next, the message is formalized at Panion, which is in 2021. All of that is preparation for the test, the Sunday law. That's the dispensation of the 144,000 that we are currently in. So we can see that in 2019, it is important that we understand the papacy because the papacy is at the Sunday law. At the Sunday law. So what do we know happens at the Sunday law? 1, you have the resurrection or the healing of the deadly wound of the papacy. What other external events happen there? The seventh kingdom is there. It is the United States in charge of other countries. We know we are in the seventh kingdom when the United States speaks. Speaking means passing the Sunday law. It's not really a Sunday law, though. It's discrimination against minorities. That's when the Republican horn is broken. We see that from 1850 and slavery, which is discrimination. This lets us see that equality is actually a subject on both the priests and the 144,000 line, which is why it's opening up this whole history. So another thing at the Sunday law is the breaking of the Protestants' horn by discriminating against minorities, which is the Sunday law. What else happens at the Sunday law? Another external event is shipwreck. So we know that discrimination, which is against the Constitution and causes the breaking of the USA's horn, will have something to do with the Seventh-day Adventist Church because both institutions are shipwrecked at the Sunday law. Another external event is Islam. We can see that we are in the increase of knowledge of the Sunday law. The only truth is not the King of the North and the King of the South and the world wars. There are other layers. And because we are in this time, we need to understand the papacy, which we did in 2018 and 2019. We also need to understand the nature of the Sunday Law, which happened in 2019, and how the Millerites understood Islam, which also happened in 2019. So we are here in 2020, right after the increase of knowledge, and we should understand all of these things: the papacy, the nature of the Sunday Law, and Islam. The Midnight Cry message. When Elder Tess says the King North and the King the South, she is being specific to the beginning of the Midnight Cry message for the priest. That which developed into equality was the subject of our latter rain, but we still got light on the papacy. Even the Third Diadochi War, which is mainly about the King of the North and the King of the South, has details about the papacy and Islam. All of these symbols are connected. Loose ends Part 2. Resurrection. Seeing that those subjects are connected, we are able to compare and contrast what resurrection means. How we know the papacy, the King of the North, will resurrect shows us what resurrection looks like for the King of the South. Resurrection is taking back what you lost when you died. The papacy resurrects when it recovers what it lost in 1798. The King of the South does the same, but from 1989. The papacy will resurrect at the Sunday Law, but it will also have to fight from Panium to the end to get that power back. Russia, the King of the South, resurrected at Raphia 2019, and it had fought the United States to get that power back, just like the papacy will have to do. Two witnesses. Another thing we saw was how there are two witnesses for every step for truth in the development of the Midnight Cry message. There were two witnesses for 273, two witnesses bringing us to World War II, two witnesses for the second half of our line and for the first half of our line in reference to World War III. External events. By the way, that's Bannon, Sessions, and Miller. So, how did the King of the North and the King of the South lead this movement to equality? The King of the North and the King of the South have to do with geography, and they are polar opposites. We know that the King of the North is church over state, so the King of the South is state over church. These can be compared to marriage. Those two models brought us to equality. There is inequality in both the King of the North and the King of the South. So by studying the world wars or World War III in the latter reign of the priest, which is 2014 to 2019, we came to a study of equality. External events. What are some external events in that history? Equality was a testing message for priests, Levites, and Nethinims. We should see that test in external events because they don't have a prophetic message like we have. So how were they tested? They tested on equality from 2014 to 2019. In 2014, there were three people: Steve Bannon, Jeff Sessions, and Stephen Miller. They started working together to overthrow the American establishment. In 2015, Obama got more rights for gay marriage. In 2016, Trump got elected. He fought against Obama and Clinton, and both of them represented minorities. In 2017, there were laws restricting homosexuals. Also in that year, the Me Too movement hit the Fox network with What Happened to Megyn Kelly. Also, DACA was overturned, and DACA was a policy that Obama made that protected young immigrants called Dreamers. In 2018, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar were elected to the House of Representatives. They are from minorities, and they are from minorities that are discriminated against, and they became the most significant visible opponents of the far right. Also, there's a crisis on the southern border of the US, and Trump calls it an invasion of immigrants. Stephen Miller made a plan in 2018 to make it very hard for immigrants. He wanted to stop them from coming. He put things in place like separating families, and AOC has called the places where immigrants are kept concentration camps. Around 2018 as well, there were laws against abortion. This year, 2020, Trump got more travel bans passed, this time mainly for African countries. His first travel ban was in 2017, and that was for mainly largely Muslim countries. Trump also says many mean things about women, including Megyn Kelly. So this is just a little of what happened. Everything started with Steve Bannon in 2014. What Bannon, Sessions, and Miller started to do was overthrow the court system so they could get these things done. The Sunday Law. Is the Sunday Law a law? At the Sunday Law waymark on the line of the 144,000, which actually isn't a Sunday law, is there a law passed? Why shouldn't there be one? Just because it's not about Sabbath and Sunday doesn't mean there will be no law. It's about equality, so you could just have a law about equality. You can only control people through laws. We would say in the past that Trump didn't like keeping Sabbath, so he would make a law to stop people from keeping Sabbath. Now Trump just doesn't like equality. There should still be a law. Fake news can't replace a law. It can't make you do anything. It might trick other people into doing something, like keeping Sunday, but it won't ever convince us. Trump doesn't even particularly care about Sabbath or Sunday. The state can only persecute people if there is a law. In 1888, some Protestants wanted everyone to keep Sunday, so they tried to make that a law. In 1888, there was an attempted law. In 1850, you have the issue of slavery. Slave owners could have tried to use things like conspiracy theories or fake news to try to convince people to practice slavery, but they couldn't force them until the Fugitive Slave Act, a law. So we can't say it's not a law because it's not about slavery. You have a triple application of prophecy. 1850 plus 1888 equals our Sunday law waymark. Those two events in middle history were laws, or were trying to be laws. So in our time, it must be a law too. All three laws are important. So how are laws passed? What does the United States do to pass a law? First, a bill must be passed in both houses of Congress. Then the president must sign it into law. But it could still fail because you need the judicial system, or the judges, to agree with your law. Because courts have a power called judicial review, where they can say a law is unconstitutional and invalidate it. For example, under President Obama, you could not have introduced a travel ban into the Supreme Court. It would not have allowed that. So to get all of these discriminatory laws passed, you first have to change the courts. Courts and judges. Courts and judges. What Mitch McConnell did. Donald Trump was given a gift. In 2014, the Republicans took control of the Senate and enlarged their majority in the House of Representatives. Mitch McConnell became the Senate Majority Leader, and he began blocking President Obama from appointing any more judges when that was his job. Mitch McConnell even blocked Obama from appointing another judge to the Supreme Court when there was a vacancy. In the American judicial system, federal judges serve for life, so they are important. The U.S. federal court structure works like this. At the top, you have the Supreme Court, it's just one of them, and then it's Court courts of appeals or circuit courts. There's 13 of those, and there's a few other courts specific to things that aren't really part of this structure. And then the last level is district courts, and there are 94 district courts. And there are state courts as well, but those are a different structure. So, judges appointed. George W. Bush appointed 2 Supreme Court judges and 62 Circuit Court judges in 2 terms. So, Obama, in 2 terms, appointed 2 Supreme Court judges as well as 55 Circuit Court judges. Then, as we have seen in 2014, Mitch McConnell stopped Obama from appointing any more judges. He says that was the most significant political thing he has ever done. And Donald Trump says that appointing judges is the most important thing he has ever done as president. Both Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump know how significant appointing judges is. So Trump, in 4 years, not 8 like Bush and Obama, has appointed almost the same number of judges as they did. He appointed 2 Supreme Court judges and 51 Circuit Court judges. Also, the judges he appointed are very conservative. The Supreme Court and the Circuit Courts have gone from liberal or balanced to strongly conservative. And the judges who are conservative are in that position for the rest of their life, unless they retire or they could get impeached. But the balance. The Supreme Court has 9 judges since 1869. And traditionally, there'd be 4 conservative judges, 4 liberals, and 1 who was in the middle. This balance had lasted for a while until Trump came. Now the Supreme Court has 5 conservatives and 4 liberals. There are lots of cases coming up this year, and many of them about women's, homosexuals, immigrants, and Black people's rights. The courts now vote 5-4. Trump has made it conservative. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Who in the Supreme Court is hanging on for dear life? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She is the second woman elected to the Supreme Court. She's 87. And how many times has she almost died or gotten really sick? 6 times. 4 times she had cancer. 1 time she had an artery basically popped open, and another time she fractured 3 of her ribs. But currently she is free from cancer. But she doesn't want to die, not just because she doesn't want to die, but also because she knows that if she dies, Trump will appoint another conservative judge to the Supreme Court. Then the court will be 6-3 and nothing liberal will ever pass. So many people are determined to keep her alive. She is also determined to stay alive, at least until the 2020 election. They think that if they can get Trump out of office, then they can get a liberal judge appointed after she dies and save the Supreme Court. But if Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies before the 2020 election, Trump will appoint another judge who will stay in that position for the rest of his life. And he has appointed young judges compared to Obama's judges. So conservative and liberal. The difference between a conservative and liberal judge is how they read the Constitution. For example, a homosexual goes into a bakery and requests a wedding cake. The baker refuses, saying they don't cook for those kinds of people. There are 2 interpretations of this incident. A conservative would say that it's against their religious freedom to bake the cake. On the other hand, a liberal would say that the homosexual was discriminated against. A Christian doesn't have to sanction their wedding. All they have to do is bake a cake for them like they would anybody else. Just show equality. This example is like slavery. In the time of slavery, conservatives will argue that it was against their religious ideas not to own slaves. Liberals will argue that the slaves, not the slave owners, were being discriminated against. conservatives will say that the Bible says races should mix and glorious land should have slaves. That became a debate over whose rights were being violated, the slaves or the slave owners. In the civil rights movement, there was the same dynamic. If you have an African American who goes into a bakery and asks for a birthday cake, but the owner refuses, saying that serving them will be against their religious convictions. We discussed that. That is similar to what happened in the schools of the time. It was against Jerry Falwell's religious ideas to educate African Americans. So somebody would ask for a cake and the Protestant owner would say no because that's against their religious convictions. So back to the cake example. The African American asks for a cake and the Protestant owner says no because of their religious views. Now, is it against the Constitution to tell the Protestant owner that they cannot deny someone service for that reason? That was the argument around segregation. The Protestants were saying that they were the victims, that they were being persecuted, and that desegregation would violate their religious convictions. They said no one should be able to force them to bake an African American a cake. Now, the story is about a homosexual who wants to get married. The Protestants say that they don't bake cake for homosexuals. It's against their religious conviction. The argument ends up becoming who's the victim, who's being discriminated against. A conservative judge will say the Protestant owner is being discriminated against. A liberal judge will say the person being discriminated against is the homosexual. In other situations, a liberal judge would also vote in favor of an African American, a woman, an immigrant, or a slave. That's how there's been two sides since the beginning. So in both these instances, the conservative Protestants would deny service because of their religious convictions.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I was just thinking as you were going through that, thinking about Daniel when he was in Babylon. How would it have gone if your Daniel's working in the kingdom, very high up position, and he's refused to do things because it was against his religion? You know what I mean?
Yes, I see. I would say in his time, I mean, not in his time, for him, he was not, I guess, discriminating against people because of his religion. He was denying himself instead of denying others because of his religion. But I see, yeah, he is saying he's not going to do so because of his religion, but it's not affecting others, I don't think.
Yeah. But even if like we work secular jobs, and in our secular jobs, we're to do a good job, whatever our job is. We don't want to be doing a job that breaks the law by no means, but whatever our secular job is, we want to do a good job and be a good Christian wherever we're at. But a good Christian doesn't mean you say, I'm not going to serve you because you serve a different God. Just something I thought about as you were reading that.
Thank you for that comment. So court cases this year. This year, there are many court cases coming up, and they have been building since 2014. And from 2014 to 2019, Republicans have taken over the Supreme Court and many of the circuit courts. Now they're conservative. This year, those courts are faced with cases about discrimination dealing with these three groups. So the three groups are the three movements. What are the three groups in the 1989 time period? We started in 1989 and then we went back to the 1960s. What three movements did we see? The Civil Rights Movement, which is about race, feminism, which is about gender, and the LGBT movement. That's the story of the 40 years prior to the time of the end on our line, but specifically the last 20 years. So we have race, gender, and homosexuality. We saw in a past presentation how these three movements began our reform line. Because of these movements, Ronald Reagan was made president, and he was a racist, sexist, and homophobic. He got elected by the Protestants, and they controlled him. He was conservative as well. These three movements are the issues that began our reform line. Steve Bannon says that under Reagan and Bush, everything was good from 1989 to 1991 as the Soviet Union was falling. Then, according to Steve Bannon, everything went wrong. An example is President Obama. So in response to that, the Protestant movement restarted in 2014. 1850 is an alpha history, and our history is an omega history. When was slavery an issue in the United States? In the alpha history. Our time of the end was typified by 1798 and 2014 by 1850 in this application because they're both Sunday laws. Long before the time of the end, slavery was a problem. That's one reason why in our time, the Sunday law can't be a Sabbath Sunday issue. In the alpha history, slavery just built up, or the cup of the USA filled up until 1850. These subjects of equality existed before 1989, the time of the end, and they are what the moral majority was raised up to fight against from 1979 to 1989. The Protestants tried to stop these movements under Reagan, but in 2014 they revived with a lot of power, and we've discussed a few things that they have began to do. The first thing they had to do before they could destroy these three movements was take over the Supreme Court and the circuit courts, beginning under Mitch McConnell in 2014. And from Trump's election in 2016 until now, the evangelical Protestant movement has been taking down these three issues. One issue is about immigration and the rights of African Americans. For example, the rights of African Americans who have been arrested and imprisoned when a white person would not have been, their rights to vote has been debated in the courts. So it isn't just about discrimination, it's also about race, and both of these fall under nationalism. The second issue is the rights of women, and the third is the rights of homosexuals. Those three subjects have been hitting the court system since 2014, and that was planned. It wasn't an accident. Many of those court cases are scheduled for this year. The judicial system. Trump and the courts. The presidency of Donald Trump isn't the only change that has happened in the United States. The judicial system has also changed, and that is the most serious. To us, that should matter because we know what will happen at the Sunday law. The Supreme Court used to stop the religious movements, and that happened under presidents like Reagan. It was a last line of defense, but since 2014, it has not been able to do that. You can say it's had its deadly wound. It's not dead yet, but it can do things like approve travel bans now. Articles to read, two of them. The first one is by The Guardian on March 10, 2019, and it's called Trump's Legacy: Conservative Judges Who Will Dominate U.S. Law for Decades. We've talked about the Supreme Court and the Circuit Court, but there are other courts, and this article talks about 89 judges that Trump has appointed, and that far exceeds Barack Obama or George W. Bush. There's also another article by the Washington Post, and it's titled, "One in Every 4 Court Judges is Now a Trump Appointee." This one was from December 21st of last year. So both articles are both news outlets are recognizing this around the same time in the same year. The first line in the Washington Post article says, after 3 years in office, President Trump has remade the federal judiciary, ensuring a conservative tilt for decades. In this article, they also talk about other things related to the judicial system. So 3 issues. So what Elder Tess wanted us to see is how the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, and the LGBT movement began. Those are what were attacked by Protestantism, the moral majority, in the beginning of our reform line. Those movements brought them together and made them start messing with politics. This also happened in 2014. But they have failed in the pre-1989 time period. Yet, since 2014, thanks to Mitch McConnell, the Protestant movement has taken down the courts. We know that the Sunday law in our time comes through the courts. Also, currently, these three issues that have to do with equality, immigration, which is race, or immigration and race in general, women's rights, and LGBT rights are being fought in the courts. The courts, though they have in the past, are no longer able to stop this religious political movement that is pushing for inequality. So, in conclusion, so this history from 2014 to 2019 also connects with the line of Christ. These events between 2014 and 2019 are just a fraction of what is going on, and they are being debated in the court systems now. The Constitution. Even if a balanced Supreme Court was addressed in the Constitution, people would still argue about what it says or what it means, like they do now. They will just read it differently. They will define liberal and conservative differently. This is like presidential term limits. The Constitution didn't say only 2 terms. People just knew only to do that. So presidents only ran for 2 terms, even though constitutionally they could run for more, until Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was president from 1933 to 1945. People were panicking by the time he got to his 4th term, and that election was in 1944. After he died the next year in 1945, a 2-term limit for presidents was added to the Constitution as the 22nd Amendment. It was approved by Congress in 1947 and ratified by the states in 1951. While everyone is behaving, people don't think a law is needed. Trump did what Ronald Reagan wouldn't. Ronald Reagan appointed a somewhat liberal woman, Sandra Day O'Connor, as a judge to the Supreme Court. She was the first woman to the Supreme Court, and I think she's still alive. She retired. And the Protestants did not like that. But he didn't want to listen to them. He didn't even want to listen to the Pope. That's why everything went wrong. He did his own thing. He wasn't really under the Protestants' control. So he did some things right. He kept the Supreme Court balanced when the Protestants wanted it conservative. Trump is the only president who has been bold enough to break the Supreme Court balance. Not even Ronald Reagan would do that. So now the Supreme Court is mostly conservative. The end. Now it's time for some review questions.
Question 1. So, what time period are we in on the 144,000s line? And we'll be in this time period to the Sunday law, National Sunday law. So I'll repeat the question. What time period are we on the 144,000 line? So what dispensation?
The early trouble, harvest, early rain.
Not harvest. Not early rain. Oh yeah, early rain. Yes, that's
on the one. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking priest.
yes. So early rain or the former rain. Question 2. What was the last dispensation on the priest line? So not this one we're in right now, but the time before this one. What dispensation is that?
Laddering.
Yes, that's correct. The latter rain. And that's how we could be dealing with two subjects at the same time, the subject of the Sunday law and the subject of equality, because we're on two lines. Question 3. What happens in the papacy's favor at the Sunday law? So what's going to happen that the papacy wants at the Sunday law?
Get resurrected?
Yes, that's correct. It resurrects, and that means it'll have its full power like it did in the 1260. Or somewhat like that. Question 4. What happens in the USA's favor at the Sunday law?
Got control over all the countries? Or most of
Yes, that's correct. What do we call that?
The Seventh Kingdom?
them? Yeah.
Yes, it's the seventh kingdom, which is the United States as the head of every country, the United Nations. Question 5. Who else can we see at the Sunday law? So what other, I guess you could say, power?
Is that Islam?
Yes. Islam. We'll see the activities of Islam at the Sunday law. Question 6. How do we get from the message on the King of the North and the King of the South to equality? So the message began in 2016, and how did it turn to equality?
As it goes from the the church over the state, state over the church, and then from there to equality.
It goes from the church and state, and then also polar opposites
Mhm.
is included in that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're polar opposites, but the poles look a lot alike. So if one is a dictator that hates equality, the other is a dictator that hates equality as well.
But one was church over state and one was state over church, right?
Yes. But before that, there's one point that you missed. We can't go from King North and King of the South to North and South, which is polar opposites. What do we have to do in between there?
Geography?
Yes, that's correct. So we go to King of the North and King of the South to geography. We see how they're opposites. One is church over state, which is the North, and the South is state over church. And since the North, church over state, is wrong, the South has to be wrong as well. So they have to be equal, and we apply equality of people.
And that was because West and East aren't real poles, only North and South are
Yes.
graphically.
And so we're applying it to equality because the church and the state are supposed to be equal.
Yes. That's correct. Question 7. How are the Levites and Nethinims tested on equality, especially in 2016?
Trump?
Yes, that's correct. With the election, they either had to choose Trump, who was in favor of inequality, or Clinton, who was in favor of equality. And we mentioned a lot more of different tests in the history from 2014 to 2019. Can anybody list some more of those?
What was the question?
We mentioned more than just the election of Trump from 2014 to 2019 last year. Do you remember any more of those that we named?
The court cases? What do you mean?
So let's see.
Oh, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her election kind of thing, or?
Yes, that was one of them. There's a lot. So
Yes, like from 2014 to 2019, there was external events that tested the Levites and Nethinims about equality. One was Trump, yes, one was AOC's election, and there was some other ones we mentioned as well. Like
Omar,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the name of the third.
they overturned.
Rashida Tlaib?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Those are the three. And so, yeah, we mentioned a lot of those. Question 7.
8.
Question 8. That was question 7. So question 8, if 1850 and 1888 are Sunday laws, what does that tell us about our Sunday law?
That's not a literal one.
Yes, it can be a law, since in the Millerites' time they had a law. It's just not about Sunday, because it's not the issue in our time. Question 9.
Question 9.
What do Republicans have to do to pass the laws that they want to get passed?
Stack the courts.
Yes. So they have to take over the well, not really the Supreme Court, but the circuit courts and,
Yeah, the Supreme Court.
yeah, the Supreme Court. But they can still get stuff done. Question 10. What is the liberals' plan to keep 4 liberals in the Supreme Court?
To
Or
keep
alive.
Ruth Bader
alive.
Ginsburg,
Yeah,
healthy.
keep her healthy.
That's correct. So if they keep Ruth Bader Ginsburg alive to at least the elections, they hope they can get Trump out of the office, and then they will be able to, if she does die, replace her with another liberal instead, because if Trump replaces her, it will be with another conservative. Then they really won't be able to get anything passed. And final question, question 11. What is the most serious change that has occurred in the United States?
The courts,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the courts being all
Imbalance.
one-sided instead of being balanced.
Yeah. Good one.
So the overturning of the judicial system, which is the courts, making them all more conservative when they should be balanced.
So if the former reign for Levites and Ethnims was the election and AOC and all of that, they should be having more of those tests in this dispensation too. Have we already seen some of them?
More of the test on equality.
Yeah, because it just keeps increasing with external events, right?
Yes. So the worse it gets, the more of a test, I guess you can say, it gets.
And this year, Trump passed more travel bans. That's the inequality. He's banning people
So-
from like Africa.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in this issue with equality, where does abortion fit in? Is that, I'm thinking that's feminism. Is that feminism? Because that's
Yeah,
what
women's rights. Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing a lot. A lot of the states are closing or forcing the closure of many of these facilities. I guess there was, I can't remember the detail, but there was a case of a 17-year-old who had to travel from her state that included parents in the decision to another state, which was like, I don't know how many states away, but she had to travel many states away to get an abortion, so she didn't have to include her parents in this decision. I don't know if you heard about that one.
Makes sense.
No. But yes, abortion is part of women's rights. And conservatives are against it. So are there any other questions or comments?
Excuse me.
Yes?
Yeah, the last thought from Susan, Sister Susan, on Trump. He's just, yeah, she put it up on chat.
Oh, yes. Trump just approved that doctors can refuse to give medical treatment to transgenders. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Was that just recent, Sister Susan?
You can't talk. Yeah, it was. I remember reading it too. Yeah. It's just really, it is really sad. They're human beings and you don't have the right to decide what human being gets health care or something about who you are and what you believe or what have you hinder your getting health care.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so this is the same thing like the one with the cake,
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. And the abortion, I was going to comment about the abortion. I grew up in a country where the abortion was illegal. And I remember many, many women died very young that could not go to a medical professional to do abortion or help her with that. And they would do all kinds of stuff that would get them to infection and die. So that's going to happen. They're going to put at risk a lot of women.
It's really amazing when you watch how they, the stand that they have on abortion, and yet you watch their behavior during this virus.
Right. Yeah, because they're restricting things in a way to help more people lose lives and have horrible times. They don't care about human life.
No, they don't.
They care about the superiority of the white race and trying to keep the status quo in check the way they like it so that they're on top and they don't get overrun.
Yeah, so I was thinking about the abortion thing the last couple of days. So is the reason politically they stand by it because that gets them the religious backing?
Who, what do you mean? Who gets the religious backing? What are you talking about?
Well,
Trump?
like, politically, one side takes the stand of abortion is wrong and one side takes the stand that abortion is right. Why do they take the stand? Do they actually politically, not religiously, politically, do they actually believe that it's wrong, or do they just do it because it gets them elected? I don't know why. I was just thinking about that the other day. That
You mean the Republicans?
Yeah, the Republicans, yeah. Or is it just because they are conservative, generally conservative Christians? It's just,
From what Tess was saying and what we were looking at in devotional this morning, which was really showed the whole origin of why this is happening. If your religion is self, if you're not in God's government, which is you show honor and respect to God and you do that to your fellow human beings as well. And so you're giving away respect and love and kindness. But that's only if you choose God. If you don't choose God, you choose something else, which is ultimately you following your own wishes and your own heart. And then it comes into a situation where the strong overcome the weak and push people around. So what we found out is basically it gets to a point where a group of people who dislike another group of people band together so that they could subjugate that group of people. But when that group of people starts to seem like they're getting bigger in numbers, then this other group starts to feel threatened. And so they have to maintain their population status. So that means no homosexuality, women stay at home and have babies, and no intermingling of races for marriage. And that was the whole point of moral majority, and what Taz has been pointing out is their fear. Because when they look around in the United States and they see all these immigrants, all these people, all these gay people, all these women wanting to do their own thing, they see it as the white race going into extinction, and then they're not going to have the power to be the boss of everybody else, and that's a huge threat to them. Okay. So everything they do is ultimately centered around this survival instinct for them to be in the powerhouse and to be in charge of everyone else. So it was just really crazy.
Abortion rights don't really have anything to do with murdering babies.
I don't think they're not selfless enough to care, I don't think.
Yeah.
They're just using it.
Yeah. So it's a matter of controlling people.
Trump changed his stance on it right before he started to run for election too. Like he used to be pro-choice.
Yeah.
years and years before, and then when he decided to run for election, he switched his position on it just for a political position, right? He doesn't have a moral care about it, I wouldn't say. It's just a political move.
I know, but none of these gay people or abortion, it doesn't have anything to do with political.
No, but the point is that it is a religious issue, and so the politics is being controlled by the religion because it is church over state in this country.
Yeah, so that's what it is.
Yeah, that's the way
what
I
we're
see it.
saying.
But I think, like, when you're looking at someone like Trump, I don't think he's doing it because he has a strong religious stance on abortion. He's doing it politically to please the religious, which is what you're saying,
Yeah,
to please the religious right.
yeah.
Yeah, he's the puppet, and whoever pulls the string.
That's right. Yeah.
Can I say a thought that I was thinking today that I think is an interesting thought?
Totally.
So I've been trying to go back to the history of Europe and try to understand how it works. And Rome, basically, when Rome sprang up, that is Europe springing up, because Rome is in Europe, and it ended up, all the France, Germany, everything, it spread everywhere. It was in the Mediterranean and everywhere there too, but took a big, deep hold into Europe. But what happened under Diocletian is that the empire was split into West and East, right? And so you had Roman Catholicism to the West and Orthodox Catholicism to the East. They were still originating from the same religion, but they were split, right? Would that maybe kind of, I don't know if there's an application of it for the United States, for when it's at the Sunday law, you have the Protestants and then you have the papacy, because they're both false, but they're both in power at the same time, and they're both Rome. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting thoughts.
Yeah. Because they both do the same persecution, the same basic belief system. And they're both in power at the same time and just kind of coexisting. And we've been trying to figure out what that's going to look like at the Sunday law. So I'm wondering if there's an answer into that history when Diocletian splits the empire, and then you have West and East. What is interesting is that the eastern part ends up being the stronger part. And I know you can't do geographic now because it's spiritual, and that's what Tess has been showing, that you have Protestant conservatives in the United States, and then you have Roman Catholics that are going to be with the papacy in the United States. So it's a spiritual application, but the stronger was the East, and I don't know who you would apply that to, but anyways, I just thought it was interesting.
Doesn't Tess do a literal conversion of East and West with the Eastern Front and the Western Front, though?
Not of Rome. Does she with the
I'm
Rome?
just saying in another application, like she takes literal for literal, because she's taking the Western Front in, what was it, World War II, was Britain and France and Poland, was it?
Well, recently she went into deeper explanation, and she said the West isn't just the literal West. It's also Australia and other countries like Britain, like these same places that have the same kind of mentality. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like, I don't know that
Yeah.
it was
They
literal.
get that name from being the literal West, though. Like, I know Australia, it depends on which way you look at it. I mean, there's no absolute West or East, really, but
I'd have to watch that video again, see what she was saying, but I guess if she applied it literally, we could take, because Rome is more, see, I don't know that you can apply that, because Rome is really strong in South America. It's also in Europe, but it's also in South America, which is still on the west side, right under North America. So I don't know.
also, I missed, I think, most of what you were saying about Diocletian, but is he the guy that was the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD? Is that who you're talking about?
No, he came way after. When the Roman Empire was split, he was the one who split it into West and East.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh my-
and then I think oh, I'm probably getting, no, it's Constantine. It was in the 300s time period, 300s AD time period, when this was happening. And you had Constantine come after Diocletian, and he also did some things that helped stuff. I need to look into more detail, obviously, but I know Diocletian was the one that split the empire.
Okay.
Well, what do we want to do? Read some or open up study?
While you guys decide, I'll be back in like a few minutes.
Okay. Anybody have anything they want to particularly maybe look at or read? Everybody's quiet.
Well, for us, we would love to continue, but we got some things to do before the Sabbath.
Okay.
So we'll have to say goodnight and see you tomorrow morning.
Okay. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for the Flucas family and your studies. They're always good. Let's see if she comes back.
You're welcome.
I was reading some passages in Desire of Ages last night. I know I sent a couple of them out to people. In the chapter of the woman at the well, let me go get my book. I'll be right back because it'll be easier for me to find where I was at. All the reading we do on the computer, it's really nice to have a book. You can remember where you're at a little bit better. But I think I sent this out to everybody. But it's in the chapter at Jacob's well. It says, our Redeemer thirsts for recognition. He hungers for the sympathy and love of those whom he has purchased with his own blood. He longs with inexpressible desire that they should come to him and have life. As a mother watches for the smile of recognition from her little child, which tells of the dawning of intelligence, so does Christ watch for the expression of grateful love, which shows that spiritual life is begun in the soul. I think about that when we try to witness to people, and he wants to perfect his work in us, that we could see such things when we share with people. I just thought it was a beautiful passage. Are you back, Adriana?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to go till 8 o'clock or with an open up study, or do you have something else you want to do?
Open.
Open. Are you up to it, Adriana?
Yeah. I already have all my stuff here. Hang on just a second. Let me
Or
look
the
something
artists? I can't draw pictures of what I'm reading for the life of me. If somebody draws it first, I get a visual, but it's like I have a hard time putting into drawings what I read.
On that note, would it be okay if I just shared with you guys what we read today? Because it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before this is the Great Empires of Bible Prophecy by A.T. Jones. This is the first volume. And up until now, he's just been explaining the relationship between God and created being and created being to created being. And so he said, once the moment that God creates another human being, Now there has to be a specific kind of relationship between God and that person. And that relationship is God loves that creature, obviously, because he created it and made a wonderful place for it to exist. But this creature has to love and honor God in return. When the created being, the intelligence, realizes who he is, what happened, and how he exists, and who he owes it all to. But the moment that, so that's one relationship that exists. But the moment another being is created, now you have a second relationship that has to occur between these two created intelligences. So they have to treat each other with love and respect because they were also created by the same God that they were created. So you can't treat this one as any lesser because God loves this one just as much as you are loved and created them just like you were created to live and to exercise whatever duties that they're supposed to do. So anytime one person subjugates another person is completely out of God's design. So this is God's design. This is God's way. This government. And the other option is the self way, where everything is just focused on you. And it's not like you're choosing Satan himself. You might hate Satan. You might think he's annoying and irritating and still love yourself. You know what I mean? Because Satan isn't trying to get people necessarily to love him. He's just trying to get people to love themselves and destroy each other because they're God's creation. And so he has jealousy towards man. So this relationship means that you're not giving the right, attention that's due to God or to your fellow man. So there is no equality in this relationship because everything is focused on the person. So it's a self-religion. And so this little bit here was really interesting. So origin of monarchy. And it is curious as well as important to notice how idolatry aided in this bad development. So let's see. First, they did know God, but they rejected him. So this is after Adam sinned, and then from Cain and Abel. So Cain went off, and from him, all the bad stuff started happening because they chose not God. They chose their own way. So they did know God, but they rejected him. They chose not to glorify him as God, nor to be thankful, nor even to recognize him. They did not like to retain God in their knowledge. Then idols were put in his place. So now you have an idol put in the place of God. So you have God over here, and then you have a little statue idol. So this is a living God, incomprehensible being, and then this is a little wood model you just made, and so this is now your new God. But these idols were but the creation of their own perverse imaginations, because there was no idol before you existed. There was no other religion before you existed. So you have to make this up. So it's not like it's true, and you know it's not true because you invented it in your own head and you created an idol. And so what you make this religion is what's in your heart and what interests you. So if your interest is, well, I don't like that group of people, and my religion says that that group of people is disgusting and they should be servants. And so now you have these ideas turned into a religion by some person who's just making it up as they go. The idols were only the imaging of their own false conceptions, and so were but the representations of themselves. And when they had put these idols in the place of God, the idols being but the representations of themselves, because they weren't real living things, it was perfectly easy and also perfectly natural and logical that they should presently put themselves in the place of the idols as the agents of the idols and the executors of its will, which from the beginning was but their own will cast from the occasion upon the idol. So I have an idea. I'm going to create this idol and make this idol a symbol of those ideas. But this idol can't execute these ideas, so I will make myself the executor of these ideas for my new God that I just created with my own ideas. Do you see how ridiculous this is? And so other people fall into the trap of worshiping this, and they don't know that it was whoever invented it. But so it goes on. For strictly and truly speaking, literally the idol was nothing. All that it could possibly be was what its creators and worshippers conceived it to be. This conception was altogether their own. Then whatever will, character, or purpose the idol could possibly have was but the will, character, or purpose of the one who made it or worshipped it. And the idol being helpless to execute this will or to manifest either character or purpose, it fell inevitably to the maker or worshipper of the idol himself to make this manifest. And since the idol had been put in the place of God, and since all the idol could ever possibly be was simply what its maker and worshiper himself was, this was simply to put the man, the worshiper of the idol, in the place of God. So ultimately it comes back to you are God, because it's your ideas that you're worshiping in this idol. So it's really interesting to see how this develops. And when apostasy had place of God, and since all the and when apostasy had reached this point, confusion and turbulence had reached the point at which it was only the power of force that could prevail, and the force which prevailed most maintained its place and power by the assertion of dominion over others according to the will and purpose of the one whom exerted it. Thus arose monarchy in the world. In the nature of the case, the monarch was in the place of God. So what we were looking at is white supremacy specifically, because you have one person who's white, and let's say this person likes other white folk but decides that other people are inferior and wants to subjugate them. But those people are high in number, so this person has to get a bigger group going to subjugate those. And so now you have the world with slavery and subjugation and the class systems, whatever race it is who's trying to be in charge. You see this all over the world. And so then we realized that if this group who's in charge ever starts to lose too many numbers, they start to lose control and be the superior group that they want to be. And so now it makes sense why you have this really huge push to make sure women stay home and have babies, to make sure there's no interracial marriage mixing, and to make sure there's no homosexuality. Because if the white race gets diluted down, as they say or think, or if they lose their numbers, then their ability to stay in power becomes lost. So if these three things happen, they can't stay in power.
They have to maintain being the majority.
Exactly. So they have to be, because I was trying to understand why this whole reproduction thing, I mean, it's just so weird. I'm like, you're not gonna go extinct. Calm down. What's the big deal over being, a minority for once? But the reason why is when you're a minority, you can exert rule on others the same way you used to be able to. And so when you have, this happened once in 2000, I don't remember when. I found a video of it recently by Vox. I'm gonna pull it up and I can share it. But there were some statistics, and I remember when these statistics came out, and it had an impact on me, because I was like, wow, the minorities are finally going to be the majorities in the United States. And I'm sure that had a huge way of instigating the religious right, because there was at one point 1 year where the group of minorities finally measured as the majority of the United States, not the white people of the United States. And I think that's a little overlooked, because that's what instigates the hatred over these three situations, is that when you realize you're losing control. So anyways, this was what we were looking at this morning. And I thought that A.T. Jones really explains it in a really nice way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that could involve as well the abortion issue, because if women are going to have abortions, they're not going to be home raising babies.
Exactly. So abortions means white babies dying to them.
Yeah.
We can really see how the Lord's thoughts are in our thoughts, right? Because he's getting ready to use the minority to go and conquer the majority. It's like a total flip.
Exactly. And that's what God always did. He always used the minority. So it's interesting that you don't see everyone realizing it. But every single time that they went to battle, Israel went to battle, it was always at odds that were, some really not favorable odds to them. But God said, have faith and I'll be with you. Even though your enemy looks stronger, you will prevail because of me. And they always did when they trusted in him. And they were always at the underdog. I don't know if that's the phrase. But I just thought it was really fascinating to see the origin. It all started back when the whole two choices came up. When Satan gave two choices. You don't have to be a part of God's government. You don't have to do all these things to make everyone else happy. It's okay to care about yourself sometimes. It's okay to just worry about you and your issues and all of that. And so, however subtly he just brought that in, the religion of self was entered into, because Satan himself, it's not like you have to worship Satan to worship yourself, because there was no Satan for Satan to follow. You know what I mean? It just happened in him where he started to have this religion of self going on. So other people, I don't think they realize that what they're choosing. They just like themselves better than they like everyone else, and they want to do everything for themselves. So now you can see the difference between I'm just going to put liberal, but we know that God has his own definition of what the perfect liberal mindset looks like. And then you have conservative here. So really it's just selfish and selfless. So I just thought I wanted to share that because it organizes it so you understand why these issues scare them so much and why they're literally living in fear, because they see themselves losing control. And so now you realize it shows them for what they are, and what they are is people who want to be superior, people who care about themselves more than anyone else. So you can argue this now in groups of people who don't understand this, and have a clear line of thought to show people how cause and effect happen with this kind of mindset. And it's a really simple way to explain to people so they can understand. Anyways, where are we? Okay. Yeah, self.
So quick question, Adriana. So do you think casting lots is like, did that come out of idolatry, you think?
Casting lots?
Right, since you're the executor of the will of your God, right? So it's like a 50-50 chance you're right or wrong.
Oh, like the Babylon thing that they did, because they were considered, yeah. So basically a monarch is God's representative on earth, and so whatever that person does has to be followed. But that person, that's an incorrect situation, because that monarch is a faulty, messed up person who only cares about himself. So you can't have I don't know if that's so. Today when we go like rock paper scissors, it's not a good thing. Is that where
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking,
I think that there's I don't know that we're doing it in a way to exert judgment on other people. Obviously, I would not, if it was a question of someone living or dying, I would not do rock, paper, scissors if I didn't know the answer. But like little tiebreakers, if you don't know what to do and both options seem good and you just pick one, you don't have to do rock, paper, scissors. I guess people just do that for, I don't know, you can just pick one without doing that. But I don't know if that's, how do we know that it wasn't a thing before Babylon?
Did they maybe pull that in place of the, if I say this right, the Urim and Thummim?
Right.
So is that like a counterfeit to that?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's a close counterfeit, right? It's almost the same.
Yeah. Because I remember reading someplace in the spirit of prophecy about the casting of lots, and it wasn't God's design for them to do that. And then I think it was linked to, it's been a while, and I don't remember exactly what I read, but I think it was linked to, you know, the Urim and Thummim. Is that how you say that?
It's
All
close.
it is-
Urim and Thummim.
So it's, you're not, so what it is deciding the fate of a situation, not by any intelligent decision, right? It's just by a throw of chance that you're leaving it up to presumably your God who's controlling things in some way. Is that what, I'm trying to think on a deeper level of what they're doing, why it's bad. But I don't think that, because in everyday life, I don't know that it's, you have to make a decision. You don't have to do rock, paper, scissors. I don't know.
Because
I
I'm
don't
thinking
know
about
that
the life of
necessarily.
Christ, right? The life of Christ, was he doing rock, paper, scissors? Or did he get the exact, this is what you should do, issue by issue?
That God, I'm just trying to think of my own experience, and this was on my mind because I was having a conversation with my daughter about some things. And a principle that I picked up in the Bible really early on when I first started reading, and I can't even say how I picked it up other than it had to have been the Holy Spirit, because I'm not smart enough to think these things up on my own. But I realized that that there was cause and effect, and cause and effect, God would give you the good and you'd be instructed what to do, but you had a choice. You got to choose. And he would let you know, like when they chose a king, he would let you know, if that's what you're going to do, this is what's going to happen, then you get to choose. So I don't know if I'm helping or hurting in that part of the conversation. So, but he gives a choice. You know what I mean? He doesn't force anything. I don't know if that relates to your question though, totally.
My thing is that I would never use that to make a decision that had a big impact. For me, it's like, which pen color do I use? Do I use blue or do I use black? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't know if there's a right choice when it comes to which color pen do I use.
No, that's like, yeah, not.
Yeah, so I would only ever use that for me as, really non-consequential decisions that don't affect anyone in any negative way at all. But that's why I was saying that when it comes to things that impact people, you don't do that cast lots thing. You have to find out what the right thing to do is.
Right, and do it.
Yeah.
And that's what he was teaching, is what is right.
Yeah.
But he doesn't force anybody.
I don't know if this makes sense, but when you cast lots, it's kind of like gambling, and gambling is wrong. People are wondering what's wrong about it.
If you put belongings on the line, isn't it? Because the gambling it's a choice of, it's a chance taking of, you can win or you can lose, but.
I don't think casting lots was something like gambling.
No?
Because this was given, we have to look it up to see if Sister White says anything about it, but it was given back in time to Abraham, and all his family was using that. And I don't know, but throughout the history, the Israelites, they use that. So it must be something different, not like gambling.
See, I'm just thinking because it seemed like the concept, if they were casting lots to see who gets the robe, that's why I just thought it that way.
But I think when Israel used it, again, it was on things that just weren't like consequential.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like they weren't going to impact a human being in a good or bad way. It was just a way to break a tie that no one, like both ways seem useful and fine, and they're not going to hurt anybody either way, but we just don't know. We just need to make a decision, and so I don't know.
That makes sense.
But if
I
Mom, do
think
you
that,
know the quote where Ellen White talks about that with Abraham?
no, I don't, but I know that they cast lots when they chose Matthias
Mhm.
instead of Judas as the 12th apostle.
Right. Yeah.
And they did, I mean, if you read the Bible, it's lots of times, and I think somehow it was guided by God. It wasn't just pure chance. But we have to look up to see what that means, because it's a question in everybody's mind, you know. It would be easy today to do something like that and say it's God's leading, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we have to look it up to see what it means.
I put a couple of comments in the chat.
I don't see him, Elaine.
I don't either.
Really?
Here, an interesting one is that the people in the ship cast lots to see who the evil fell upon, and the lots landed on Jonah because he was the cause of the storm.
Right.
There you go. Christine didn't speak up. I sent him to Christine by mistake.
I was getting ready to unmute and say, hey, send them to me.
So the second one, no faith in casting lots, let none be led from the sound, sensible principles that God has laid down for the guidance of his people to depend for direction on any such device as the tossing of a coin. Such a course is well pleasing to the enemy of souls, for he works to control the coin and through its agency works out his plans. Let none be so easily deceived as to place confidence in any such test. Let none belittle their experience by resorting to cheap, the rest of it's not there, sorry.
What's the title of that passage?
It said it on there, no faith in casting lots. It was in Selected Messages, I think. Well, one of them was SDA commentary. Yeah, that was the SDA commentary, volume 6.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I'm finding that same phraseology under another title that says casting lots and selecting church officers.
Yeah, I posted that one in there too. I just didn't read that one. That one's on top of the second one. The finishing of that statement was, let none belittle their experience by resorting to cheap devices for direction in important matters connected with the work of God. The Lord works in no haphazard way. Seek him most earnestly in prayer. He will impress the mind and will give tongue and utterance. The people of God are to be educated not to trust in human inventions and uncertain tests as a means of learning God's will concerning them. Satan and his agencies are always ready to step in at any opening to be found that will lead souls away from the pure principles of the Word of God. The people who are led and taught of God will give no place to the devisings for which there is not a thus saith the Lord.
Yeah, so I think it's something that belongs to ancient Israel.
I thought somewhere she compared it to, or I want to say compare and contrast to the Urim and, is it I'm going to look at that. Is it Thummin, I think?
I don't know.
I see only one thing in here. At the right, we know this, at the right and left of the breastplate were 2 large stones of great brilliancy. These were known as the Urim and Thummim. By them, the will of God was made known through the high priest. When questions were brought for decision before the Lord, a halo of light encircling the precious stone at the right was a token of the divine consent or approval, while a cloud shadowing the stone at the left was an evidence of denial or disappropriation.
No, it's not like that. It's not the same thing. because when the apostles were doing right before the Pentecost, there was no high priest with that apron on it. So it's a different thing.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about in the Old Testament though. But what I was saying is, I think I remember her her comparing the two in some passage. I couldn't find anything just now when I tried to look, but I thought I remembered reading a passage where she compares the two. And I'm saying that she wasn't saying that they were alike, that they were not alike.
Yeah. I don't know. I never looked up to this one to see what it is.
So in our dispensation, what is the casting lots or the Urim and Thummim test?
Well, what in some of those passages that I was reading, she tells us to read our Bible in much prayer, and God will impress on the heart.
Yeah, I'm thinking earnest prayer, like she was saying in the Great Controversy, how few know how to wrestle with the Lord in prayer.
Yeah.
And you get these answers, right? You're right.
Do you think that casting lots would be looking at the lines? Because the lines are the ones that are selecting for us.
Amen.
What's true and what's not true.
And they're our guide.
Yeah.
So we don't need to cast lots on things because the lines direct our path.
That's right.
Well, I do have something we could bring up real quick that I need some help on, but I have to clear her screen for a second. Let me find the right window. I put this in the teacher chat that if you guys want to start emailing me is the easiest. If you have to do it another way, that's great. Email just works well for me because it's always in front of me until I clean it out, and text messages and WhatsApp get lost in everybody else's messages all over the place. So, but if you want to put yourself in here somewhere, I don't see Sister Victoria here. I did get her to, she's going to do something in August, but we have our Zoom camp meetings here for June, July, August, and we'd like to get those filled in. And we are going to start working on Bible study, maybe not every Friday, but on Fridays more so. That was right, Adriana? That helped you better?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I put a few of those on there. I didn't do it every Friday. But I'd like to get the Zoom camp meetings filled in if you guys want to get with me on what you want to do. Don't everybody jump at once. Okay.
Are we still trying to encourage everyone to present, stand up as a teacher and
oh yeah,
this preparatory? So has everyone in our group presented yet?
Where's Donna? Sister Donna is gonna do her first one coming up here this month. And Sister Jackie's gonna do her first one coming up this month.
How many does it take to establish a thing?
2.
All right, so they need another one put on them.
Well, Sister Donna actually she's going to do the Zoom camp meeting, 2 presentations, and then she has 1 here. Is that what you meant?
Yes, I'm thinking we shouldn't, yeah, we should encourage everyone to establish the fact that they are teachers.
Yeah.
So simple as just doing 2 presentations. So if you haven't had everybody do 2, that hasn't done 2, you can fill those in really quick.
Yeah, we can give priority to that. So that would bring Robert and Susan back into it too. Because I think
that's where you come to some of the challenges. So I can't just put them on there when they have challenges that they can't meet with. I think Susan left.
Oh, no, I'm like, if they want to, if they're here. I didn't know they weren't here.
Yeah, Robert might be still here.
I'm here.
Let's don't force like Trump.
We're not forcing, we're just saying that
Yeah.
we're trying to encourage.
Yeah. And I know Susan is pretty tied up with taking care of her mom.
Yeah.
Which days are you looking at filling in those empty days? Sorry, I wasn't here for a bit. Or are you replacing people who can't do it?
You want to put your name on there somewhere?
Yeah, like somewhere down in the empty slots, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Throw me on one. I don't know what yet, but I've got to do one for the Canada one in 2 weeks, so I can just
You can do the same thing.
do the same one. Yeah, if I can't get 2 out, so I'll let you know what that is when I figure it out.
Okay, so May is full,
Yep, that's fine.
and you can do our Zoom camp meeting, I think. Can he? We're in charge, right? Can we do that?
Wait, what? What do you mean? Why wouldn't he be able to?
I know,
He'll be a guest speaker from out
Do
of
I need like do I need dual citizenship or something, or?
I know. Oh,
We're in charge. We can do that.
I'll just put a red hat on. Will that be enough, or?
No, Red Hat. No.
No.
Oh, okay.
So I can put you on here if you want.
Whatever you want. What is that? June 26th? Yeah, that's plenty good.
Is that too far out for you?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll have something even different by then.
2 or 3 presentations, because we'd like to split it up with 5 presentations, and maybe somebody does 1, and 2 people do 2, or 1 person does 3 and 1 person does 2. Adriana, you should get back on here again, because you're
I was just gonna say that tomorrow, why don't you ask again tomorrow when the largest number of people are on? That way we can see who else needs to do a little bit more teaching.
Okay.
And then after that, if there are any spots open, I'll take whatever's left in the camp meetings.
well, we got weeknights going up here, so but those
I can't do Wednesdays. That's the thing, is I work, and it's really crazy for me to try to get home in time to like, I'm exhausted and frazzled by the time I get home. Okay. And I usually get around 6:30 anyways, so.
Okay. Well, we'll go over this again then tomorrow.
Yeah, I haven't done one since February, so
You want to be in here somewhere?
yeah, might as well, sure.
Okay. You want to take the camp meeting slot here with John?
For one presentation?
You can do 1 or you can do 2.
You can put me for one. Sure.
Okay. And then we'll find 1 more person then to fill in.
What do we share on? Anything we want?
Yep.
Anything to present truth stuff, yep.
Yeah.
Anything to what?
Present truth stuff in our movement.
Is that during the day?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean,
Jonathan, you're breaking up really bad.
You started to say something, right, Jonathan?
He wants to know if that's during the day. So is that Friday and Saturday?
Oh, it'll be 1 Friday night and then 4 presentations on Sabbath.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure it wasn't during the day because I wouldn't be able to.
Not during the day, during the week, just the Sabbath.
Yeah, okay.
And Friday night.
I'll have to figure something out for my internet because Zoom is for a long time been really bad for me. My connection here has been really bad, so it affects Zoom quite a bit. So what I'll do is I'll go downtown or something where I can get a good connection. I do that quite often, so maybe I'll do that.
Okay.
Just so it's not a real bother for everybody.
Can you go into town and stuff like that with everything shut down? Is everything?
Yeah, there's internet is pretty much free all downtown, so I just go downtown and park.
Okay.
Like when my internet's bad, I go download videos downtown and then I come home and watch them.
Oh, okay.
I've had to do that before in Grass Valley, go to the Starbucks parking lot and sit in there and hook up to their Wi-Fi and download things when I didn't have internet. They were the only ones who had free Wi-Fi. Yeah. So I was just sitting in their parking lot sometimes anyways. Weird things we need to do for our internets to work.
Yep.
So we missed you for song service.
Adriana.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Is that my cue to do something?
No, we did it earlier.
Oh.
We missed you.
I can play another song too if we want.
We can pick one to sing together to close. I don't know that I have. Let me get my hymnal.
I'm pretty sure I've shared this before, but that one, the piano music that I was playing last time.
You mean just today?
No, that was Laura.
I know that was Laura. Yeah.
The piano music that I played last week. I've had that CD for a long time, but I don't do this as often as I used to. But last Sabbath, when we were in the morning, we were getting started, and I played it before we started. Remember, I had it playing like in the break or something. And there, it's not just that music, but just find your favorite hymn. Do your study time, do your read time, spend time with the Lord in prayer, and then turn on one of your most uplifting, however you want to do it, hymns. And it last week I hadn't experienced this in a long time. It gives you this joy that wants to just pour out of your heart, this inexpressible joy. And that's my prayer for all of us, to have to live in that atmosphere all the time.
I already when I don't have anything to do, I will go to the hymns and I'll sing about 10 of them. And then my brother and my niece will come in. But yeah, I do that. I just sing out loud in my room.
Did everyone hear those songs that were posted on Bible study today by was it Chaiwatu and Kimberly, the two that used to be in the movement?
Are they in the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, in the Bible study group.
Oh, they are.
Have such good harmony. It was posted probably in the last couple of hours.
Oh, wow.
But I guess like they used to be in the movement. You guys probably know.
Right.
But they were singers, I guess. I don't know. They were really good. If anyone's interested, you can find the link.
Are they actually in the group, or did somebody just post their song?
No, someone posted it. Someone who I think maybe who knew them or something like that, and said a little something about it or whatever.
I see it. Lord, prepare me.
Yeah, is that the one? I think so.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yes, that is. Oh, it's so good. Anyway.
The Levites will come in and they're the singers. They're gonna sing.
Are they?
Amen.
That's good.
The Levites, when they're gonna come in, they will be the singers. So we will have music.
I know, but he's asking, so how did you come to that?
Wow.
He said, really?
Either way, most of us aren't singers, so we can use them.
Yeah.
So did you find something?
I'm looking. Does anyone have anything in particular that they like?
Yeah, let's pray. I don't know if this is going to do it backwards, but I want to stop the recording because when we do music, it kind of gives me a headache to try to upload the video without having to edit it out because it'll flag it as copyright.
Okay.
Gracious Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you for bringing us through another week, bringing us to another Sabbath, Lord, and as the sun is setting, some of us might already have had our sunset, Lord. We just want to praise you and thank you for the week coming to a close and for entering into your Sabbath rest. Father, it is truly a blessing to have been called out of the darkness that each of us were in, and to be called into this marvelous light and have you, Father, give us the blessing and the privilege and the honor to be a part of this great work. I pray, Father, for the priests that are scattered around the world, that each and every one of us would apply our hearts, Lord, to be fully consecrated to thee, to be fully surrendered to thee, to have, Father, nothing but a purpose to be used by you to save souls. Lord, through our trials, remind us of your precious promises. Through our trials, remind us of our past victories. Remind us, Lord, and help us, no matter how discouraged we get, to remember how you have led us in the path, that we can come to trust you more and more each day. And that though darkness may sit around us, Father, when we contemplate the things you've done for us, that darkness lifts, no matter what the burden is that we're under. And so I just pray that each one of us would experience that in all our trials as we go forward in this path. So we thank you, Lord, for the blessed study. We thank you for the Flucas family and the presentation that they gave tonight. We just praise you and thank you for the work that you've done with this group, for leading us, Father, and putting this system in place for us well in advance, and having us adjusted to it, that it made it really easy for us, Father, while we're having to do social distancing, that it just made it really easy for us. But Father, while we may have it easy, we also want to pray for those that don't. Because throughout all this, Father, there are those out there that are not able to work. There are those out there that are sick, those that have passed away. There are loved ones, Father, that are passing away, not being able to have their families near them. And there are workers, Father, that are experiencing things in a way that not all of us can even comprehend. So we just ask, Father, during this time of judgment and time of darkness, that your mercy would be seen and that your people would be drawn to you, and that this virus, Father, and all else that's to come upon this world would do its appointed work in the hearts of your people. So bless us, Father, that we might be a blessing to others. We thank you and we praise you, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.